Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the polished glass exterior of Newman Enterprises like a knife through silk. Inside the executive office, Victoria Newman stood tall behind her father's desk, because today it was her desk. The skyline of Genoa City shimmered behind her, calm and oblivious to the storm that had just arrived at the front entrance. She didn't flinch when her assistant rushed in, breathless. "Victoria, the police are here." "Of course they are." Victoria's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Send them up." Across the room, Nick Newman stared at his sister in disbelief. "You knew this was coming." "I suspected," Victoria replied coolly. "You didn't think to tell anyone," Nick shot back. "Not me, not Dad." Victoria's eyes flashed. "This isn't something I needed help handling." Before Nick could respond, the office doors opened. Two uniformed officers stepped in, followed by Detective Chance Chancellor. His expression wasn't hostile, but it wasn't friendly either. "Victoria Newman," Chance asked formally. She stepped forward. "That's me. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate fraud, insider trading, and obstruction of justice." The words landed like thunder. Nick's face drained of color. "This is insane." Victoria didn't blink. "On whose complaint?" Chance held her gaze. "The SEC has been investigating financial irregularities connected to Newman Media's acquisition of Cyaxares. There's evidence suggesting you authorized off-the-books transfers to manipulate stock values." "Oh, that's absurd," Nick said. Victoria's mind raced. Cyaxares, Ashland's empire, the deal that had nearly destroyed them all, she had cleaned it up, protected the company, protected her family. But someone had been digging. "I want to see the warrant," Victoria said evenly. Chance handed it to her. Her eyes scanned the document. The evidence cited internal emails, transfer authorizations, shell accounts. Someone had built a case. Nick turned to Chance. "You know her, you know she wouldn't." "This isn't personal," Chance interrupted. "I'm doing my job." Victoria handed the paper back. "I assume I'm not being given the courtesy of turning myself in." "I'm afraid not." For the first time, a flicker of something crossed Victoria's face, not fear but fury. "Fine," she said, "let's not make a spectacle." Too late. As they escorted her through the bullpen floor, every employee at Newman Enterprises froze. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that Victoria?" "She's in handcuffs." "What did she do?" Victoria kept her chin high. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her shaken. The elevator ride down was silent. Nick followed close behind. "Call Michael," he whispered. "I'll get Dad." Victoria gave the smallest nod. Outside, reporters had already gathered, cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. "Victoria, did you embezzle funds? Are you responsible for stock manipulation? Is Newman Enterprises collapsing?" Victoria paused just long enough to look directly into the cameras. "I have nothing to hide," she said clearly. "The truth will come out." Then she was placed into the squad car. Across town, Victor Newman was in the middle of a meeting when his phone buzzed. He ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again. And again. He glanced at the screen. "Nick." Victor answered with irritation. "Nicholas, I'm busy." "Dad, it's Victoria." Something in Nick's voice made Victor go still. "What about her?" "She's been arrested." Silence. Victor's voice dropped into something dangerously quiet. "Explain." Nick relayed the charges, the warrant, the media circus. By the time he finished, Victor's expression had turned to stone. "This is an attack," Victor said flatly. "Oh, Dad, someone wants to damage this family, and they've chosen my daughter as the target." He ended the call without another word. At the Genoa City Police Department, Victoria sat in a holding room, hands now free but her freedom clearly temporary. The cold metal table reflected the fluorescent lighting overhead. Chance entered alone. "I'm required to ask if you'd like to make a statement." Victoria looked up at him. "Do you believe I did this?" "That's not my role." "That wasn't my question." Chance hesitated. "I believe there's more to this story." She leaned back, "Then start digging." Meanwhile, at Crimson Lights, the news blared across every screen. "Victoria Newman arrested in corporate scandal." Sharon stared in shock. Phyllis leaned forward with interest that bordered on delight. Well, Phyllis muttered, that's one way to shake up the power structure. This isn't gossip, Sharon said sharply, this is someone's life. Please, Phyllis replied, the Newmans always land on their feet. But even she looked uneasy. Back at Newman Ranch, Victor poured himself a drink. Nikki stood across from him, pale. Our daughter is sitting in a jail cell, Nikki whispered. Victor's grip tightened around the glass, not for long. Do you think she? No, his voice cut like steel. Victoria would never jeopardize this company. If lines were crossed, they were crossed to protect us. Nikki closed her eyes, that's what worries me. Victor turned toward the window, eyes blazing. Find out who benefits from this, follow the money, follow the enemies. Because in Victor Newman's world, nothing happened by accident. Hours later, Victoria was released on bail. As she stepped outside, she wasn't alone. Victor stood waiting. Father and daughter locked eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Victor said quietly, who did this to you? Victoria exhaled slowly, I intend to find out. He nodded once, good, because until we do, no one in this town is safe. And somewhere in the shadows of Genoa City, someone watched the news with a satisfied smile. The game had begun. The next morning, Newman Enterprises felt like a war room. Lawyers filled the conference table. Financial analysts dissected transaction histories. Michael Baldwin stood at the head of the table, reviewing documents with clinical precision. The prosecution's case hinges on 3 wire transfers routed through a Cayman subsidiary, Michael explained. They claim you personally authorized them. Victoria folded her arms. I did authorize emergency restructuring during the Cyaxares fallout, but not for personal gain. Intent will matter, Michael said, but so will perception. Nick paced, so what, someone forged her authorization. Or manipulated timing, Michael replied. If the transfers occurred during market-sensitive periods, it could look like deliberate stock inflation. Victor remained silent, absorbing every word. Who had access, he finally asked. CFO office, executive board, its security, Victoria answered immediately. Nick stopped packing Adam. The name hung in the air. Victoria's expression hardened. Adam wouldn't be that sloppy. Victor's eyes narrowed, but he would be that ruthless. Across town, Adam Newman watched the news replay from his office at Newman Media. His face revealed nothing. Sally Spectra stood nearby. You didn't do this, did you? Adam smirked faintly. If I were going after my sister, you'd know. Would I? He didn't answer. Meanwhile, the board of directors demanded an emergency session. Whispers of a leadership change began circulating. If Victoria were convicted, even indicted formally, her position could become untenable. Inside the boardroom, Victoria stood before them, composed but blazing inside. I will not step down, she declared. These accusations are strategic, someone wants instability. A board member cleared his throat, optics matter. So does loyalty, Victor cut in sharply from the end of the table. Anyone here questioning my daughter's capability should question their own place at this company. Silence fell instantly. But doubt lingered. Later that afternoon, Chance returned with new information. There's something you need to see, he told Victoria privately. He showed her a digital audit trail. The authorization came from your encrypted login, but the IP address traces back to a remote server, one that bounced through multiple proxies. So it was hacked. Possibly, Chance said, but whoever did it knew your system intimately. Victoria's stomach tightened. Inside job. She thought about the months of chaos following Ashlyn's deception, the scramble, the cover-ups, the emergency meetings. So many people had been in and out of confidential files. Dig deeper, she told Chance, and look at who accessed the cybersecurity protocols 2 weeks before the transfers. Chance nodded. That evening, Genoa City buzzed louder than ever. At Society, conversations hushed when Victoria entered. She felt the stares, the judgment. Phyllis approached her boldly, rough week. Victoria's eyes turned icy, careful. I'm just saying, Phyllis shrugged, sometimes power comes at a price. Victoria leaned closer, and sometimes bitterness never pays off. She walked away without another word. At home, alone for the first time, Victoria allowed herself to feel it. The weight, the humiliation, the anger. She stared at her reflection. I will not fall, she whispered to herself. The next morning, Chance arrived with urgency. We found something. He laid out printed logs. 2 days before the transfers, someone accessed your executive override codes. The access point, a workstation in the Newman Media Division. Victoria's mind immediately went to Adams. But Chance shook his head. The login credentials used were Adams. Then whose? Chance met her eyes. Your former assistant. Victoria froze. Lauren. No, the temp who replaced her during the merger transition. She resigned abruptly last month. Victoria searched her memory, quiet, efficient, forgettable. Where is she now? Off-grid, Chance replied, but we're tracking financial deposits into her account, large ones. Victor was informed within the hour. This is bigger than a rogue employee, he growled. Someone paid her. Nick joined them, who hates us enough to orchestrate this. Victor's expression darkened. There are many. As investigators closed in on the assistant's location, tension mounted. Then the twist came. The deposits funding the assistant's account traced back to a shell corporation, linked to a rival conglomerate long hostile to Newman Enterprises. An old enemy resurfacing. A calculated strike. Victoria's arrest had been phase 1, damage the air, destabilize the empire, weaken stock confidence. But they had underestimated her. 2 days later, the assistant was apprehended. Under pressure, she confessed. She had been recruited months ago, paid to monitor internal systems, given instructions on how to duplicate Victoria's digital signature. Who hired you? Chance demanded. She hesitated, then gave a name. The shockwave rippled through Genoa City. The rival CEO publicly denied involvement, but the evidence mounted. The charges against Victoria were dropped pending full review. Reporters swarmed again, but this time with a different tone. Victoria, how does it feel to be vindicated? She stood beside Victor and Nikki on the courthouse steps. It feels, she said calmly, like justice. Nick smiled with relief. Adam watched from a distance, unreadable. But Victoria's gaze hardened. Because she understood something now. This wasn't just business. It was war. And she had been naive to think she could play defense. Back at Newman Enterprises, she reclaimed her office. The skyline looked different now, not serene but strategic. As she picked up the phone, set up a meeting with our competitors, she instructed, and double our cybersecurity budget. She paused, and prepare a counteroffensive acquisition. Because if someone wanted to test Victoria Newman, they had just created their most dangerous enemy. Genoa City would never look at her the same way again. Not as a fallen executive, but as a survivor sharpened by betrayal. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. The Newmans had been struck. Now they would strike back.